I'm just going to let Mark lead us off because Jackson Smith-Njigba has been his guy since before last year's draft. So, Mark, fill us in about Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Yeah, this is probably, if you had to stamp one guy as your guy of the draft, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Miles Murphy just rose his hand and he's like, wait, Mark, don't forget about me. But it's probably still Jackson Smith-Njigba. It's one of those two players. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been a guy, like Shane said, that I came into this year saying, I can't wait to see what he does. And we got robbed of that. So my plea to NFL GMs, Howie Roseman in particular, is please don't forget about 2021. JSN's a 6 foot, 196 pound prospect, 8.29 relative athletic score, struggled in a bunch at the combine, but the reason that number is high is because he put up the best numbers at the entire combine in terms of agility in the shuttle and the 3-cone. He is a special quick twitch athlete in that way. He had 95 catches for 1,606 yards with 17 yards per catch and 9 touchdowns in 2021. He had a 15 catch, 347 yard, 3 touchdown performance in the Rose Bowl against Utah. That was one of the best and most impressive games I've ever seen a wide receiver play. I remember it because I bet on Utah in that game. I think he'd be a no doubt top 10 pick if he would have played in 2022. Some people are worried about him being a slot receiver. Do people realize that he played with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and outplayed both of them from the slot?
Dibes, let's let you lead off with Zay Flowers. He's number 2 for you, number 4 for me, and he's number 5 for Mark. Talk to me about Zay Flowers.
Just an incredibly explosive, agile, dynamic talent. Rare balance, both as a route runner, as an after-the-catch threat, man. Extremely twitchy athlete. A guy that can create separation up and down the route tree. I think this guy in the NFL, in an offense that has a lot of pre-snap movement in the slot, moving all around the field, could be so dynamic at the next level. This guy is known for his ability to accelerate quickly, make sharp cuts, make defenders miss. That is evident in the open field. He's got plus route running ability, crisp footwork, his ability to change direction smoothly. This guy can really do it all from a receiver perspective. I think he can play inside. He can play outside in the NFL. To me, his comp looks like Tyler Lockett at the moment. I see a universe where he could be arguably the steal of the first round. He's just an energized wide receiver with blistering foot speed, accelerative capacity, just balance to send defenders spinning in all phases, man. He's small. He's 5'9", but I think he plays the position bigger than that. You've seen him catch balls, contested catches downfield, make plays on the ball. He also plays with an uber amount of confidence that is really fun to watch.
All right, let's roll on here. We'll talk about my number 2. It's Quentin Johnston. He is number 4 for Mark. He's number 3 for Dibes. Out of TCU, he was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school with a track and basketball background, and he became a 3-year contributor for TCU, with his best year coming in 2022 when he helped lead TCU to the national championship game. He is 21 and a half years old. He is 6'3", 208 pounds with an 82-inch wingspan, which is 96th percentile for wide receivers. He also had a 40.5-inch vertical leap, which is 93rd percentile. In 2022, he had 60 receptions for 1,069 yards. That's 17.8 yards per reception. He also had 6 touchdowns. He has elite speed and long strides, and so he's able to eat up defensive backs' cushions and off coverage really quickly. He gets on top of guys fast, and he's also got really good lateral agility. He snaps off his routes really well to create separation, and he understands how to use leverage in man coverage, where to leverage defenders and how to sit down and find soft spots and zones. And with all of that, he's explosive after the catch too. He had 8.9 yards after catch per reception in 2022, which was 11th among all wide receivers. And so there's a lot of upside with Quentin Johnston. Now, weaknesses. I think he struggles at times to release from press coverage. If you can get hands on him at the line, sometimes you can throw off his whole timing. And he tends to be inconsistent at the catch point. He lets the ball come into his chest on routine catches instead of extending and catching it away from his body. So he's a bit of a body catcher as well. All right. Well, let's keep it rolling here. Mark, your number 2 is Jordan Addison. I have him at number 3. Dibes has him at number 4. So consensus, we've all got him up here near the top, but we'll let you take the first crack here. Tell us what you like about Addison.
Yeah, I'm a big Jordan Addison fan, and it dates, again, with similar to Jackson Smith-Njigba, it dates back to his 2021 at Pitt with Kenny Pickett. He had 100 catches for 1,593 yards and 17 touchdowns with Kenny Pickett in 2021. He's a 3-year contributor, and then he transferred to USC this year. He had 60 catches for 900 yards and 8 touchdowns in 11 games with Caleb Williams, which is very good, but it was a bit disappointing after being the Biletnikoff winner the year before. It seems to me, just from watching a lot of Caleb Williams over the last 2 years, and maybe Shane can speak to this a little bit more since he watched him a year at Oklahoma, it seems like Caleb spreads it around a little bit more than we've seen a lot of the other top quarterbacks do. It seems like, we've seen other Oklahoma quarterbacks or Kenny Pickett or CJ Stroud really zone in on wide receiver ones. Caleb kind of spreads it around a little bit. I think that's why we didn't see Jordan Addison put up gaudy numbers, and the yards per catch were still really good there for Addison. He gets separation so easily. If you can't tell, I'm a guy who likes route runners. It's definitely the way that I lean here at the wide receiver position as being an important trait. Great footwork, really wide route tree, 3-level route runner. He seems to have an extra gear to his 4.49 speed downfield. Incredibly dangerous on screens. USC seemed to rely on that a lot more than Pitt did, but he was pretty successful at it. Lincoln Riley's a big screen guy, so that makes sense. I've seen a lot of Darnell Mooney comps, and I get it because, there's a lot of similarities there. But I do think that's underselling Jordan Addison a little bit. I don't necessarily have a better comp to throw at you because it does make a lot of sense. I don't have one necessarily that makes a ton of sense frame-wise for Addison. But to me, Jordan Addison is a lock to be at least a productive receiver at the next level. I can understand questions about his size or lack of physicality leading to questions about his upside, but I just keep looking at how he looked in 2021 in an offense that was so reliant on him, and I think he has wide receiver 1 potential.
All right, let's go to Mark's number 3. It is Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. He's number 5 for Dibes. He's number 7 for me. So Mark, lead us off here with Jalen Hyatt.
This is one of my favorite prospects in the entire draft. Speed. That's what you have to know about Jalen Hyatt. This guy took over for a 1 to 2 month stretch at Tennessee this year, and he and Hendon Hooker were the story of the country in college football. He may have only had 67 catches on only 89 targets, but wow, did he make the most of them. They were a loud 67 catches for 1,267 yards and 15 touchdowns. Truly special, 19 yards per catch. 6 foot, 176 pounds, 9.49 RAS despite the size concerns there. And he didn't even run as fast as people thought he would or perform in agility drills that he obviously would have smoked. Great vertical, great broad jump, freakishly long arms. And if you go to the tape, 4.4 is vastly underselling how fast this guy can be downfield. Very sure hands and a very good ball tracker to go with that speed. People that are very low on Jalen Hyatt love to point out that he hasn't dealt with a lot of press coverage. I think it's something like 60 snaps of press coverage that he's had to deal with. And good luck covering Jalen Hyatt's speed and press coverage would be my message to that. He won't have to deal with it much because it's a foolish strategy against him. His speed and his first step is so deadly fast that, sure, I understand the size concerns about a press, but man, take your chances if you will, if you're going to press Jalen Hyatt. People will talk about a limited route tree. I point at the fact that every route he runs should have home run potential. He is that fast. People will point out that he was used in uber-specific ways in Josh Heupel's scheme. I point out that Josh Heupel isn't the only offensive genius that could figure out that Jalen Hyatt is fast and be able to use it in interesting ways. People will point out his size. I will point out, just like I do with Bryce Young and just like I did with Devontae Smith, that he did this at the highest level of college football.
Okay, let's roll on here to my number 5. He is number 8 for Dibes, and disrespectfully, Mark has left him off of his board to get back at me for my Jalen Hyatt thoughts. It is Marvin Mims, the receiver out of Oklahoma. Marvin Mims set a Texas high school record for single season receiving yards with 2,629 yards as a senior, and he caught 32 touchdowns. I don't think my local high school football team scored 32 touchdowns this season. He committed to Oklahoma like all good players from Texas do, where he had a good career, but he saved his best for 2022 when he had 1,083 yards, 20.1 yards per reception, and 6 touchdowns. He is very young. He'll barely be 21 years old on draft night. 5'11", 183 pounds. He ran a 4.38 40 at the combine, which is 90th percentile. Vertical jump was 39.5, which is 89th percentile, and he had a 9.13 relative athletic score. He averaged 20-plus yards per reception in both 2021 and 2022 with 2 different quarterbacks, and I think that's worth mentioning. He tracks the football really well, and he adjusts to it with excellent body control downfield. He had a 51.5% reception rate on deep passes in his college career. I think he finds the holes in zone coverage really well, and he sight adjusts his routes well, and he creates consistent separation with savvy route running. And he's got really good rack ability. He's also got experience as a punt returner, which is always a plus when you're talking about day 2 wide receivers, which is where I have him in this as the second round grade. So that's all the pluses. He is a little undersized though. 27th percentile height, 11th percentile weight. He's got a small wingspan. He didn't run the most diverse route tree. And like Jalen Hyatt, who we just talked about, he benefited from a spread offense in college that doesn't translate well to the NFL. Okay, let's keep this show moving here. At number 6, both Mark and Dibes have Josh Downs. I have him at number 8. So, Mark, I'll let you lead off on Josh Downs here.
Yeah, and I think Josh Downs, to me, I think there's a clear top 6 in terms of how my receiver rankings broke off. And I think there's a pretty steep drop off here after Josh Downs to my next level of guys. Even though Josh Downs has a lot of size concerns, 5'8.5", 171. Despite that, 8.97 relative athletic score, amazing agility and speed drills, great in the vertical and broad jump, especially for his size. 2-year contributor and extremely similar years with both Sam Howell and Drake May. Something that Shane mentioned there with Marvin Mims definitely also applies here for Josh Downs. He was able to be the favorite target and the very clear wide receiver 1 in an offense with 2 different quarterbacks. 195 catches, 2,400 receiving yards, and 19 receiving touchdowns over the last 2 years. And Josh Downs, while he may be small, he plays in his head like he's 6'9". So, I mean, this guy thinks he's huge with the way that he goes out there and plays. He's definitely a guy who plays bigger than he is. There's definitely some concern about the jump from the ACC to the NFL, and if that size is going to be a little bit more of a deterrent than it was in the ACC. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have size concerns, because I think if he was, 6 foot, he'd be very clearly my number 3 receiver. He's very, very good on tape, in my opinion. I think that he's rock solid in the red zone. You can use him in a lot of different ways. Probably, one of the more fun watches on tape, but the size concerns and the level of play is definitely a concern.
Okay, let's roll on to my number 6. He's number 9 for both Mark and Dibes. He is 6'1", 204 pounds. Ran a 4.51 40, which is 51st percentile, but he did have a 1.49 10-yard split, which is 93rd percentile. So he explodes, quick acceleration. If we were playing Madden, we would say he's got a little lower speed rating, but he's got a really high acceleration rating. And he also had a 41-inch vertical, which is 95th percentile. Overall, a 9.48 relative athletic score. He had 96 receptions this year for 1,355 yards and 10 touchdowns. And, I mentioned, but average speed, he's got elite acceleration. He's got very good ball tracking skills, and he's got great body control to get to off-target passes. So at 6'1", he's not the hugest guy, 36th percentile, but he does have a pretty good catch radius, and it all goes back to his body control. He's also a really good blocker, which matters, blocking out on the perimeter in the running game. And he's good after the catch. He routinely will make defenders miss after the catch and rip off big gains. Now, at SMU, he did run a pretty limited route tree. That's not to say he's a bad route runner. I think he is a good route runner with what he was given, but he just wasn't asked to do much. So it's one of those situations where you have to try to figure out, is that all he can do, or was it all he was asked to do? Just because it's not on tape doesn't mean he can't do it. So I'm not concerned about it, but it is something I would want to ask about if I was in a room with him. And then he will make highlight reel catches, but then he has routine drops at times. We are through the top 6. We're going to finish it up here with our 7 through 10 and some honorable mentions. We're going to start at number 7. We've already talked about my number 7, Jalen Hyatt. We're going to go to Mark's number 7. It is Cedric Tillman. He is number 10 on my list. He is off of Dibe's list. So, Mark, why don't you lead us off with Cedric Tillman?
Yeah, Cedric Tillman's a guy I really have liked, again, since 2021. 6'3.5", 213, 8.6 relative athletic score, huge hands, freakishly long arms, elite size, elite vertical, elite broad. Didn't run very well at the combine, but to me, he appears faster on tape than he tested. In 2021, he had 64 catches for 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. In 2022, he only played half the year and had an injury. He had 37 catches for 417 yards and 3 touchdowns, which would have been good. For 74 catches, 833 yards and 6 touchdowns extrapolated over the year. You have to wonder if that drop in yards per catch is due to Jalen Hyatt's increased role as the home run guy in the offense. I think Cedric Tillman's role kind of changed into being a bit more of a first down guy, a bit more of a possession receiver than being a big threat. He's great at the catch point, incredibly physical, probably the most physical receiver in this draft class. I didn't necessarily know how to write this in my scouting report. It's kind of funny when he has a corner that he can pick on. He's a bully. Like, he is just so mean to a corner that's just being overwhelmed physically. Like, he will just throw the guy around, and it's not even a contest. But then if a corner comes out and kind of punches him in the mouth, it's almost like in the TV show, like when the big bad bully gets stood up to and then he like runs away and cowers away. Cedric Tillman doesn't handle it great when a corner is really physical with him. So while he is the most physical receiver in the draft, it's kind of weird if you're going to be like a super physical corner against him. I'm not necessarily sure if he's figured out what his answer yet to that is.
All right. Well, Dibes, let's go to your number 7. It is Nathaniel Tank Dell. He is number 10 on Mark's board. I think he was number 12 on my board. So he's just outside of my top 10. Talk to me about Tank Dell.
He was the nation's leader in receiving touchdowns last year. Elite release off the line, excellent route running, phenomenal hands. As someone like me who overvalues the Senior Bowl, this guy went there and did not lose a single rep. He had a 4.49 second 40-yard dash at the combine, which was middle of the pack, kind of like some others we talked about here, like Jalen Hyatt. Definitely didn't test as well as I thought he would, especially when you watch the tape. But talk about 10-yard split, 1.49 seconds. That was the third fastest time at the combine. Again, like some others, this is a guy that's going to heavily rely on NFL offenses to kind of move him around a bit. He is so dynamic after the catch. Last year, 9th in the country with 530 yards after the catch. Once he gets into open space, man, he makes defenders look silly. He was tied for 11th with 19 missed tackles forced after reception. He reminds me a lot of Tavon Austin. Incredible upside in the right system. Doesn't have good size. Does not have good strength. Those are huge concerns, no question about it. But, man, a lot of corners were worried about Dell burning them deep. And you saw that at the Senior Bowl. And like he is just a blur on the screen. He is just so fast with his footwork and acceleration. I have a round 2 grade on Tank Dell. I might be biased, but I think without the size concerns, those are real. But he's right there with Zay Flowers in some respects.
All right, let's go to number 8. We've already talked about mine and dives. Mark, let's talk about yours. It is A.T. Perry, wide receiver out of Wake Forest. Talk to me about your guy.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's not a lot of big bodies in the draft, but you forgot one, and it's A.T. Perry. That's the one more kind of big-bodied receiver. 6'3.5", 198, 9.84 relative athletic score, elite 40-yard dash at 4.46, elite agility, shuttle and cone drills, incredibly quick first step, one of the quickest first steps in this entire draft class among receivers. Very quick off the line, great against press, long strides for fly routes, a huge catch radius, incredibly smooth route runner, good in the scramble drill with improv routes. I thought that was something that I felt really strongly about in tape. I thought that was something he did really well. Great on third down. He's a first down machine for Wake Forest. He's been fantastic over the last 2 years with Sam Hartman. 152 catches for 2,400 yards and 26 touchdowns over the last 2 years. Hopefully, as a Notre Dame fan, we see a little bit more of that from Sam Hartman this year. He transferred Notre Dame from Wake Forest. That's enough of Notre Dame talk. But similarly to Johnston, A.T. Perry, you wish he played his size. That's definitely the thing that's missing here from this, or else we'd be talking about a top 5 receiver probably. He can struggle on contested catches. He had a few too many drops.
Okay, let's go to number 9s. I'm the only one with a number 9 that hasn't been talked about, and it is Tyler Scott, the receiver out of Cincinnati. Another little guy, 5'10", 177 pounds. That's 9th and 5th percentile, respectively. He ran a 4.44 40. That is a lot of fours back to back. Had a 39.5-inch vertical leap and an 8.28 relative athletic score. In 2022, Scott had 54 receptions for 899 yards and 9 touchdowns. He has the speed to threaten defenders vertically. Like some of these other guys we've talked about, I thought he looked faster than his 40 time on tape. And he does a really good job of snapping off routes into the intermediate areas of the field once he's made defenders respect his vertical speed. He tracks the ball really well and adjusts to it downfield, and I think he generates separation well, despite the fact he's not one of the best route runners in this class, but he does a good job getting separation. And he's got really good rack ability. In high school, he was a running back, and so he runs like a running back when he's got the ball in his hands. But like a lot of guys in this class, he's small. He has drop issues. He's got a 10% drop rate on his career, and he's got things to clean up in his route running. He doesn't keep his footwork consistent. Sometimes he rounds off his routes, which is that's a worst enemy of a quarterback. That's how routes get undercut for interceptions. He does that a lot. And I just don't know where he plays. Well, let's bring it home here with Dibes number 10. It is Jaden Reed. Dibes, talk to me about Jaden Reed. He was going to be my honorable mention. I forgot you had him in your top 10 here just because I had a fun fact about him. But you go first here. Talk to us about your guy.
Dude, I mean, one of the biggest winners of the draft process, I think, is another guy that's supremely underrated. Great separation ability. Dominated the Senior Bowl, really good deep speed, clocked in one of the best, fastest times during Senior Bowl practices. Dude is a burner. There's a guy that I think that has great change of direction skills, really good route runner. I think he's going to be dominant in the slot, like a third down guy in the slot that can be a just safety blanket for a quarterback in the NFL. He's quick. He can separate. He's got really good strength after the catch. He's a tough guy, really good blocker for his size. Special teams ace, gives you a lot of value in the return game. Eagles, specifically Eagles, if we're talking like a day 3 guy, Jaden Reed, man, I think this guy could fit in perfectly as that wide receiver 3 in the slot. Just all around great wide receiver. And another guy, that is being slept on. Jaden Reed out of Michigan State, man, he's been impressive.
All right. Well, that wraps up our top 10s here, but we watch a lot of guys. Sometimes there's some guys that just miss the cut. With this receiver class, I think we kind of got into some day 3 guys just in our top 10s. But Mark, Dives, do you guys have anybody that you want to shout out, give an honorable mention to here? Somebody that was just outside your top 10.
I'll go last.
Yeah, I feel like we touched on a lot of them because we had differences in the bottom half. So I went a little bit off the board. I could have went with a Jaden Reed or a Tyler Scott or a Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims is my 11th, as I said. And I could go with a Keyshawn Butte, even though I kind of think he stinks. So I'm going to move on and talk about someone who I don't know what my opinion is on him. I'm ranking him in my top 100 because I think that there might be a lot of untapped potential. But Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State is not a guy you'll hear get talked about a ton. But he is 6'3". He's a 3-year producer in a terrible offense at Iowa State. He was so far and away the only threat at all in the passing game at Iowa State. He had 107 catches for 1,171 yards and 6 touchdowns, 83 catches the year before that, 64 catches the year before that. His yards per catches are really low, but the entire defense knew where the ball was going. And when you were watching Iowa State games, he was their entire offense. So there's part of me that thinks if you put him in a normal offense and had him do some of the things that he did well at Iowa State without it being your entire offense, there's a chance that at the next level, this guy really, really levels up. I don't know what my opinion is on this guy. I think he's a really, really bizarre grade to try to figure out because of the offense he was in and because of how heavily he was targeted. He's a really, really interesting prospect, though. I don't know what to make of him, but I thought to bring him up because he won't get brought up in a lot of top 10 to 15 receiver discussions.
All right, Dibes, what about you?
I'm going to give you a handful of day 3 guys just real quick. One is Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland. Really good run after the catch ability, high energy player. Day 3, another dude, Jonathan Mingo out of Mississippi. A guy I looked into a lot. Doesn't have really good twitch, struggles winning off the line of scrimmage, but really good size, really good acceleration. Will probably be a possession receiver at the next level. Parker Washington out of Penn State is an interesting name. Another day 3 guy. High floor, low ceiling type of prospect that has, really good upside in the slot, really good route running. Puka Nacua out of BYU is a really fun watch. Definitely a guy that you need to kind of check out. He has experience playing the X, the Z, the F, all over the place. Dominated. Go ahead.
I'll chime in real quick on Nacua. When he went down, BYU was without a paddle. He was huge to their offense. I don't know if that matters as a draft prospect, but he was a guy who was incredibly, incredibly important to what BYU did offensively.
Yep.
He's also a member of the all prospect name team. So one of the better names in the draft, in a draft that has a lot of good ones.
Yep. He's got really good ball skills, deep threat, and the biggest sleeper of the wide receiver position that could be a day 2 threat is Andre Iosivas out of Princeton. Big time, like Alec Pierce type of dude. Great speed. He's a burner. 6'3", athletic freak out of Princeton, man. He needs a lot of polish. He needs a lot of work at the next level, but his measurements are nuts. So Andre Iosivas out of Princeton dominated the Senior Bowl. One to watch out for.
Don't these Princeton smart guys have enough? Now they're in the NFL draft. They won a March Madness game. A lot going on at Princeton.